Brandon stood behind his desk, feeling more useless with each passing minute. He watched Marcus and Victor continue their conversation, switching between Mandarin and English. The janitor was explaining complex technical details about spacecraft systems that Brandon barely understood even in his own language. Marcus talked about hull composition and radiation shielding and emergency protocols like he had designed the ships himself. Victor seemed genuinely impressed by Marcus's knowledge. He asked questions about the ship's medical bay facilities and how the life support systems would handle extended deep space journeys. Marcus answered each question with precision and pulled up technical specifications on the display screens when needed. Brandon had to search for most of this information during normal sales presentations, but Marcus seemed to have it all memorized. "The Atlas 7 has triple redundancy on all critical systems," Marcus said, switching back to Mandarin. "The designers learned from past failures and built this ship for people who cannot afford to have things go wrong when they are far from help." "You speak like someone who has been far from help before," Victor said, watching Marcus carefully. "Someone who knows what it feels like when everything depends on whether your systems work or fail." Marcus paused, and his expression became distant for a moment. "Yes, I have been in that situation. It teaches you to respect good engineering and never trust a single point of failure." Brandon felt frustration building inside him. This was supposed to be his sale and his commission, but he had been reduced to standing on the sidelines. He cleared his throat loudly and tried to take back control of the conversation. "Mr. Johnson, perhaps you should return to your cleaning duties now," Brandon said, trying to sound authoritative. "I can handle things from here. We have professional translators I can call if needed." Marcus stopped talking and looked at Victor as if asking whether he should stay or go. Victor's friendly expression cooled, and he turned to look at Brandon with eyes that had suddenly become hard and calculating. "Actually, I would prefer Mr. Johnson to continue helping," Victor said in English that had a noticeable accent but was perfectly clear. "He understands both the language and the technical details. That combination is rare and valuable." Then he switched back to Mandarin and spoke directly to Marcus. "Besides, I suspect there is more to your story than meets the eye. Were you in the military?" Marcus hesitated, and Brandon could see him weighing whether to answer. Finally, he nodded slowly. "A long time ago. I served in the Colonial Defense Force before they restructured everything." "What was your rank?" Victor asked, leaning forward with interest. "Does it matter anymore?" Marcus said quietly. "Those days are far behind me now." "Everything matters," Victor replied gently but firmly. "A man who knows these spacecraft systems the way you do was not just an ordinary soldier. You had responsibility and command." The lobby became very quiet. Even the usual background hum of the building's air systems seemed to fade away. Brandon watched the two men face each other, and he could sense something important happening even though he did not understand most of their words. Marcus's shoulders were tense and his jaw was tight, like he was remembering things he would rather forget. "I was a commander," Marcus finally said. "I led a squadron of scout ships during the Frontier Wars. But that was before everything changed and I had to leave that life behind." Victor's eyes widened slightly with recognition. "The Frontier Wars. You were there during the Zeta Crossing incident." It was not a question, and Marcus did not treat it like one. He simply nodded once, and his face became carefully blank, like he was trying not to show any emotion. Brandon felt a chill run down his back, even though he only understood part of the conversation. He had heard about Zeta Crossing because everyone had heard about it. 15 years ago, there had been a terrible battle in deep space where raiders attacked a colonial defense fleet. Many ships were destroyed and many people died. The survivors had been called heroes on all the news channels, but Brandon had been young then and had not paid much attention. "You do not need to talk about this if you do not want to," Victor said, switching to English so Brandon could understand. "I did not mean to bring up painful memories." "It is all right," Marcus replied, also in English. "It was a long time ago. After the incident, I took the military severance package and tried to build a different kind of life. But I learned that the skills which make you good at commanding spacecraft do not help much in civilian jobs. Cleaning pays the bills, though, and the work is honest." Brandon shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. He had worked in this building for 3 years and had probably walked past Marcus hundreds of times. The janitor had always been invisible to him, just another person in a gray uniform who emptied trash and mopped floors. Brandon had never wondered about his name or his past or his story. None of the office workers ever did. The Zeta Crossing survivors were offered good positions in the new military structure, Victor said carefully. I heard they got priority placements and decent ranks. Why did you not take advantage of those opportunities? Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Priority placements for some people, but not for others. Politics got involved and people started looking for someone to blame. I made enemies by telling the truth in my official testimony about what really happened. Victor studied Marcus for a long moment, and something passed between them that Brandon could not identify. It was like they understood something about each other without needing to explain. Then Victor turned to Brandon with sudden decisiveness in his eyes. I will purchase the Atlas 7, Victor announced, fully loaded with all the customization options we discussed. And I want Mr. Johnson here to receive a commission on this sale. Brandon's eyes went wide with shock. That is not necessary, Mr. Chen. Marcus is not in the sales department. He is just a... Brandon stopped himself before he said something insulting. Consider it a consultant's fee then, Victor said firmly. I insist on it. A man with his knowledge and experience deserves to be recognized and compensated. Marcus shook his head quickly. That is very generous, but I cannot accept. I was just helping out because I speak the language. You were doing considerably more than just translating, Victor said. But we can discuss the details later. For now, Mr. Phillips, shall we handle the purchase paperwork? The glass doors of Horizon Technologies opened smoothly, and a man walked inside wearing an expensive dark suit. His name was Victor Chen, and he looked like someone who had a lot of money. The building lobby was bright and clean with shiny floors and tall windows. Behind the front desk stood Brandon Phillips, who was the manager of this section. He looked up from his computer tablet and smiled at the visitor. Brandon had worked at this company for 3 years, selling spacecraft to rich people and big companies. He was good at his job, and he knew how to talk to important clients. When he saw Victor Chen walking toward him, he could tell this man was wealthy just by looking at his clothes and the way he moved. Brandon straightened his tie and prepared to give his best sales presentation. Victor stopped at the desk and took off his sunglasses. He had sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to notice everything around him. Then he started speaking, but the words that came out were not in English. Victor was speaking Mandarin, and the words flowed fast and smooth like he had been speaking this language his whole life. He pointed at the spacecraft models on display and continued talking, while Brandon just stood there with his mouth slightly open. Brandon felt panic rising in his chest. He had taken a short training course about different cultures when he started working here, but he only learned a few basic phrases in Mandarin. He could say hello and thank you, but that was about it. Now this rich client was asking him questions about expensive spacecraft, and he could not understand a single word. Brandon tried to smile and raised his hands apologetically. I am very sorry, sir, but I do not speak Mandarin, Brandon said, feeling embarrassed. Could you please speak English, or maybe I can call someone to translate for you? Victor kept speaking in Mandarin, and his tone suggested he was asking important questions about the ships. Brandon could see this sale slipping away from him, and he knew his boss would be very angry if he lost a client who looked this wealthy. He started looking around desperately, hoping someone else in the office could help him. Near the corner of the lobby by some fake plants was a man in a gray uniform. He was holding cleaning supplies and wiping down the glass walls. This was Marcus Johnson, and he worked as a janitor in this building. Marcus was a tall man around 56 years old with gray hair at his temples and kind eyes. Most people never really noticed him because janitors tend to be invisible to office workers. He just cleaned quietly and did his job without bothering anyone. But now Marcus put down his spray bottle and cloth. He stood up straight and walked toward the front desk where Brandon was still struggling with Victor. Brandon saw Marcus coming and was about to wave him away because this was not the time for the cleaning staff to interrupt. Then something unexpected happened that changed everything. Marcus started speaking in perfect Mandarin. The words came out of his mouth smooth and natural, just like how Victor was speaking. Marcus had the right tones and pronunciation, and he sounded like someone who had studied this language for many years. Victor's eyebrows went up in surprise, and a real smile appeared on his face for the first time since entering the building. Brandon stood there completely shocked. His brain could not process what he was seeing. The janitor who cleaned the bathrooms and emptied the trash cans was having a fluent conversation with this millionaire in a foreign language. Marcus was gesturing at the spacecraft models and explaining technical details, while Victor nodded and asked more questions. They talked back and forth like old friends discussing something they both understood well. "You speak very beautifully," Victor said in Mandarin, looking impressed. "Your accent is excellent and suggests proper education, not just casual learning." Marcus gave a modest nod. "I had good teachers many years ago. Now you are asking about the Atlas 7 model over there. It has excellent range for its size, and the fuel efficiency would work well for someone planning long journeys to the outer colonies." Victor laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. "The manager looks like he just saw a ghost. Should we explain to him what we are discussing?" "That might be kind," Marcus replied with a small smile. Marcus turned to Brandon and switched to speaking English. "Mr. Chen is interested in buying one of our long-range spacecraft. He has specific questions about customization options and how long delivery would take." Brandon blinked several times, trying to understand what just happened. "You speak Mandarin? How did I not know about this?" "You never asked," Marcus said simply. "Should I keep translating, or would you rather call the official company translator?" No, please continue," Brandon said quickly as his professional instincts finally started working again. "Mr. Chen, I apologize for the confusion. We are honored that you are interested in our vessels." Victor waved his hand, dismissing the apology. "No offense taken. It is refreshing to find unexpected expertise in unexpected places." He looked at Marcus with new interest. "Though I must admit I am curious about your story, my friend." Marcus began translating between Victor and Brandon, helping them discuss the spacecraft features and prices. Brandon found himself just standing there watching, while the janitor handled the complicated sales conversation. Marcus knew all the technical specifications and could explain things about quantum drives and navigation systems that Brandon himself had only recently memorized from training manuals. The whole situation felt surreal, like the world had turned upside down, and nothing made sense anymore. Victor asked detailed questions about the ship's defense capabilities and life support systems. Marcus answered everything with confidence, and occasionally pulled up information on the holographic displays. Brandon realized he was supposed to be leading the sales presentation, but instead he had become just an observer in his own lobby. The Atlas 7 was designed for solo travelers and small crews, Marcus explained in Mandarin. "If you plan to go beyond the established trade routes, you will appreciate the redundant backup systems. Everything critical has a backup, and most backups have their own backups." "You sound like someone who knows the importance of redundancy from personal experience," Victor observed carefully. A shadow passed across Marcus's face for just a moment. "I have seen what happens when systems fail at the wrong moment. It is not something you forget." The paperwork took almost 2 hours to complete. Brandon sat at his desk filling out forms on his computer tablet, while his hands trembled slightly. Victor Chen was not just buying the spacecraft itself. He was purchasing a complete package with upgrades and extended warranties and premium service contracts. The total price came to well over 7 million credits. This single sale would guarantee Brandon's annual bonus and probably earn him a promotion. Through the entire process, Victor insisted that Marcus stay in the office with them. He kept asking Marcus questions about different technical specifications and upgrade options. Brandon noticed how Victor's questions became increasingly detailed and specific. He was not just asking about the ship anymore. He was testing Marcus's knowledge about emergency procedures and deep space navigation and crisis management. When all the final documents were signed and transmitted, Victor leaned back in his chair. He looked at Marcus with an expression that seemed thoughtful and calculating at the same time. "Mr. Johnson, I would like to make you an offer," Victor said. Marcus had been gathering his cleaning supplies, preparing to go back to work. He stopped and looked up. "Sir, I am not just a rich man who collects expensive spacecraft," Victor explained. "I own and operate a private exploration company. We take contracts for deep space surveys and long-range reconnaissance missions. Sometimes we do search and rescue operations in the outer colonies. The work is dangerous, but it is important and meaningful. I am always looking for experienced crew members who know what they are doing." Brandon watched Marcus's face carefully. The older man kept his expression neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. It might have been hope or longing or fear. Maybe it was all three emotions mixed together. I am 56 years old, Marcus said quietly. My best years are behind me now. That is nonsense, Victor replied immediately. Experience does not lose value as you get older. It becomes more valuable. I have read about what happened at Zeta Crossing. I know that you and your squadron held off 3 raider ships with just a single scout vessel for 40 minutes. You gave the evacuation transports enough time to escape and saved hundreds of lives. That kind of skill and courage does not just disappear. That was 15 years ago. Muscle memory lasts forever, Victor countered. Besides, I am not offering you a combat position. I need a chief engineer and a backup pilot, someone who knows these vessels inside and out, someone who can keep us alive when things go wrong in deep space. And believe me, things always go wrong eventually. Brandon held his breath without realizing it. He could not imagine why Marcus would accept such an offer. Why would someone give up a steady, safe job with regular hours for the dangers of deep space exploration? The outer colonies were wild and unpredictable. Ships disappeared out there sometimes and were never heard from again. But then Brandon realized he did not really know anything about Marcus. The man had hidden depths that no one had suspected. Maybe there were dreams buried inside him that had been waiting for a chance to come alive again. I would need time to think about it, Marcus said finally. Victor pulled out a business card from his jacket pocket. It was one of those old-fashioned physical cards that wealthy people still carried, because it made them look sophisticated. He handed it to Marcus, who took it carefully like it was something fragile and precious. My contact information is on there, Victor said. The offer stands for 30 days. After that, I launch on my next contract and I will need to fill the position with someone else. Marcus stared at the card in his hand. 30 days. One more thing I want to be clear about, Victor added. Whatever political mess ended your military career, I do not care about it. I care about 3 things: competence, character, and courage. From what I have seen today, you have all 3 qualities in abundance. That is what matters to me. Marcus slipped the card into his pocket and nodded slowly. He seemed unable to speak for a moment, as if emotions were stuck in his throat. Finally, he managed to say thank you, and then he gathered his cleaning supplies and left the office. After Victor left the building, Brandon stood alone in the lobby. The space seemed darker and quieter now, like Victor's presence had been filling it with energy. Brandon looked around at the shiny floors and glass walls that Marcus cleaned every day. For the first time, he tried to imagine what it would be like to be Marcus, to have been a military commander who led people into battle, and then to spend 15 years pushing a mop and emptying trash cans. Brandon pulled up his computer and searched for information about the Zeta Crossing incident. He found news articles and military reports and video footage from 15 years ago. He read about how a small colonial defense squadron had been ambushed by raiders. Most of the ships had been destroyed quickly, but one scout vessel commanded by someone named Marcus Johnson had refused to retreat. That ship had fought against impossible odds, buying time for civilian transports to escape into hyperspace. The reports called it a heroic last stand. Marcus had been badly injured and his ship nearly destroyed, but he survived. Hundreds of colonists lived because of what he did. After the battle, there had been an investigation and some kind of political controversy. Marcus had testified truthfully about command failures, and that honesty made him enemies. Eventually, he left the military with an honorable discharge and a medal he probably kept in a drawer somewhere. Brandon closed the files and rubbed his eyes. He felt ashamed of himself. For 3 years, he had walked past Marcus every single day without really seeing him. He had thought of the janitors and cleaning staff as basically invisible. They were just part of the building, like the furniture or the air conditioning. He never learned their names or asked about their lives or wondered what brought them to this job. How many other people in this building had stories like Marcus? How many had done important things or faced terrible choices or carried heavy burdens that no one knew about? Brandon realized he had been living in a very small world where the only people who mattered were the ones who could help his career or make him look good. He thought about Victor Chen and how the Millionaire had treated Marcus with respect and interest from the moment he started speaking Mandarin. Victor had seen something valuable in Marcus immediately. He had recognized worth that everyone else, including Brandon, had completely missed. Brandon made a decision right then. He would do better. He would pay attention to people even if they did not seem important or useful to him. He would learn names and ask questions and treat everyone with basic human respect. It was a small thing, but it was a start. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus continued working his regular shifts at Horizon Technologies. He arrived every morning at 6 o'clock before most of the office workers showed up. He cleaned bathrooms and emptied trash bins and mopped floors just like he had done for the past several years. But something fundamental had changed and everyone could feel it. Brandon had told people about what happened with Victor Chen. The story spread through the building like wildfire. The janitor who spoke perfect Mandarin and turned out to be a war hero. People started paying attention to Marcus in ways they never had before. They smiled and said hello when they passed him in the hallways. They asked him questions about his military service and his language skills. They treated him like he mattered. Marcus found the attention both touching and exhausting. He had chosen to be invisible for good reasons. After Zeta Crossing, he wanted a quiet, simple life where nobody expected anything from him except clean floors. Now that protective invisibility had been stripped away and he felt exposed. But there were positive aspects too. The respect in people's eyes when they greeted him felt good. The genuine interest they showed in his opinions made him feel human again instead of just a function. Every evening, Marcus returned to his small apartment on the edge of the city. The place was tiny with just one bedroom and a kitchen area that was barely big enough to cook in. He lived alone and had few possessions. Most of his furniture came from secondhand stores. On his kitchen table sat Victor Chen's business card exactly where he had placed it 3 weeks ago. Marcus picked up the card every night and stared at it. The deadline was getting closer. 20 days left, then 15, then 10. He pulled up information about Frontier Explorers LLC on his computer tablet. The company had excellent reviews and a solid reputation. They paid their crews well and treated them fairly. Their safety record was impressive, considering the dangerous nature of deep space exploration work. Victor Chen himself had a good reputation in the industry. People described him as honest and fair. He took on challenging contracts that other exploration companies avoided. He did not cut corners on safety and he valued his crew members. Everything Marcus read suggested this would be a good opportunity. Marcus also researched the Atlas 7 spacecraft that Victor had purchased. It was a beautiful ship with top-of-the-line systems. The quantum drives were efficient and powerful. The hull could withstand radiation and impacts better than older models. The navigation systems had redundancies built into redundancies. Looking at the specifications made Marcus's heart ache with longing. He remembered what it felt like to pilot a ship through deep space. The feeling of the quantum drives humming beneath your feet as you jumped between star systems. The sight of unknown planets appearing on your screens for the first time. The satisfaction of bringing your crew home safely after a difficult mission. He had loved that life before Zeta Crossing took it away from him. But fear held him back from making a decision. Fear of failure and fear of showing that age had dulled his skills. Fear of being responsible for other people's lives again. At Zeta Crossing, his choices had saved many people, but not everyone. Some of his squadron members had died. He still remembered their names and faces. He still woke up sometimes from nightmares where he heard their voices calling for help that never came. Could he carry that kind of weight again? Could he make life and death decisions knowing that he might fail? Could he trust himself not to freeze up when things went wrong? These questions haunted him as the deadline approached. On the 28th day, Brandon found Marcus sitting in the employee break room. There was a cup of coffee in front of Marcus, but it had gone cold. He was staring at nothing with the expression of someone lost in thought. "Have you made a decision yet?" Brandon asked, sitting down across from him. Marcus looked up without surprise. "How did you know I was thinking about it?" "Because I have been watching you for 3 weeks," Brandon said. "You have the look of someone standing on the edge of a cliff trying to decide whether to jump." "That is a pretty accurate description, actually," Marcus admitted. "So are you going to jump?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. He wrapped his hands around the cold coffee cup even though it provided no warmth. Finally he spoke. "When I was younger, I thought courage meant not being afraid. I believed that brave people did not feel fear. Then I went through Zeta Crossing and learned something different. Real courage means being absolutely terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway." "That sounds like you have made your decision," Brandon said. "I suppose it does," Marcus said, allowing himself a small smile. "I might regret this if I am wrong." "You will regret it more if you do not try," Brandon pointed out. "Besides, I think Mr. Chen saw something in you that you have forgotten about. Something that has been buried under years of mopping floors and emptying trash." Marcus nodded slowly. Maybe he did. Or maybe he just needs a warm body who knows how to fix a quantum drive. "I do not think that is true," Brandon said seriously. Victor Chen could hire any engineer he wants. He chose you specifically because he saw your quality. He saw who you really are underneath the janitor uniform. And who am I really? Marcus asked. Someone who held off 3 enemy ships alone to save hundreds of people, Brandon said. Someone who speaks 5 languages and understands spacecraft systems better than the people who sell them. Someone who has been hiding his light under a bushel for 15 years because he was afraid to shine again. Marcus looked at Brandon with surprise. That is pretty insightful for a sales manager. I have been learning, Brandon admitted. You taught me something important 3 weeks ago. You taught me that every person has value and depth if you bother to look. I was wrong to ignore you all those years. I was wrong to treat you like you were invisible. You are being hard on yourself, Marcus said. Most people do not see janitors. We are trained to be invisible. That does not make it right, Brandon replied. Anyway, I think you should take the job. I think you should go back out into space where you belong. You have spent enough time hiding. Marcus finished his cold coffee in one swallow and stood up. You are right. I have spent enough time hiding. Time to stop being afraid. Marcus called Victor Chen that same evening using the contact number on the business card. His hands were shaking slightly as he pressed the call button on his tablet. The device rang 3 times before Victor's face appeared on the screen. He was in what looked like a ship's bridge with control panels visible behind him. Marcus, Victor said, breaking into a wide smile. I was hoping to hear from you before the deadline. I want to accept your offer, Marcus said before he could change his mind. If the position is still available, I would like to join your crew. The position is absolutely still available and I am very glad you called, Victor replied. I have been working on the Atlas 7 for the past 3 weeks getting it ready for our next mission. Having you here to help with the final preparations would be extremely valuable. They discussed the practical details. Marcus would need to give 2 weeks' notice at Horizon Technologies. Victor said that was fine because they would not launch for another month anyway. There would be time for Marcus to get familiar with the ship's systems and meet the other crew members. The pay was significantly better than what Marcus earned as a janitor, and it included bonuses for successful mission completion. There is one thing I need to be honest about, Victor said seriously. This work is dangerous. We go places where help is days or weeks away if something goes wrong. I have a good safety record, but I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. You need to understand what you are signing up for. I understand, Marcus said. I have been in dangerous situations before. At least this time I will be doing something meaningful instead of just existing. Good, Victor said. Then welcome aboard officially. Send me your details and I will have the contracts drawn up. You can start whenever you are ready. After the call ended, Marcus sat in his apartment feeling strange emotions swirl inside him. Fear and excitement and hope all mixed together. He had spent 15 years in a kind of emotional hibernation. Now he was waking up and it felt uncomfortable but also good, like blood returning to a limb that had fallen asleep. The next morning, Marcus went to his supervisor at Horizon Technologies and gave his 2 weeks' notice. The supervisor was surprised and tried to convince him to stay. They offered him a raise and a promotion to a supervisory position, but Marcus politely declined. His mind was made up. Word spread quickly through the building that Marcus was leaving. People stopped him in the hallways to say goodbye and wish him luck. Some of them seemed genuinely sad to see him go. Others admitted they had barely noticed him before but now wished they had taken the time to know him better. Marcus accepted their words graciously and told them he appreciated working there. Brandon organized a small farewell gathering on Marcus's last day. They set up cake and drinks in the break room during lunch hour. About 30 people showed up, which surprised Marcus because he had not realized that many people even knew his name. They gave him a gift card and a framed photo of the building with everyone's signatures on the back. You are making us all look bad, Brandon joked during a short speech. Here we are selling spaceships and you are actually going to travel on one. Living the dream while we stay behind pushing papers. Someone has to push the papers, Marcus replied. And someone has to keep these floors clean after I leave. Both jobs matter. True, Brandon agreed, but I think your new job suits you better. You belong out there among the stars, not stuck here with us. After the gathering ended, Marcus cleaned out his small locker. He did not have much to take. A change of clothes and some personal items that he kept for emergencies. He turned in his uniform and his security badge. Then he walked out of Horizon Technologies for the last time as an employee. The next morning, Marcus took a shuttle to the private spaceport where Victor kept his ship. The facility was smaller than the commercial ports, but well maintained. Ships of various sizes sat in their docking bays being loaded or serviced. Marcus found Bay 17 where the Atlas 7 was waiting. The ship was even more beautiful in person than in the promotional images. Its hull gleamed silver and blue under the work lights. The design was sleek and efficient, built for speed and endurance. Marcus stood at the base of the boarding ramp with his single duffel bag containing all his possessions. He wore a new jumpsuit in Frontier Explorer's colors that Victor had sent him. Despite his nervousness, he had to admit it felt right. Victor emerged from the ship's interior and his face lit up when he saw Marcus. "I was beginning to wonder if you would get cold feet and not show up." "I almost did," Marcus admitted. "I have gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. It is scary to hope for something better after so long." "It makes perfect sense," Victor said, walking down the ramp. "But comfort is not the same thing as contentment. I think you have been waiting for a reason to hope again, and now you have one." They walked up the ramp together, and Marcus felt his breath catch as they entered the main corridor. Everything was new and clean and filled with potential. The air smelled like fresh electronics and new materials. It was completely different from the old worn military vessels he remembered. This ship had never seen combat or crisis. It was a blank slate waiting to make its own history. "Let me show you the engineering bay," Victor said, leading the way. "I think you will appreciate what we have set up." The engineering section was incredible. Holographic displays showed system status in real time. Control panels were arranged logically and efficiently. Tool arrays hung on the walls with everything an engineer could possibly need. Redundant systems monitored redundant systems. It was a masterpiece of modern design. Marcus ran his hand along a control panel and felt the familiar thrum of a ship at rest. The quantum drives were in standby mode, but he could sense their power waiting to be released. It felt like coming home after a very long journey. "There are 3 other crew members joining us," Victor explained. "Karen Lee is our navigator. She grew up in the outer colonies and knows the routes better than anyone. Paul Martinez is our medical officer and our cook. Yes, we actually have decent food on long journeys. And Susan Brooks is our communications specialist. She handles all our diplomatic contacts with colonies and other ships. You will meet everyone tomorrow." "What exactly will our mission be?" Marcus asked. "We are surveying a cluster of unexplored systems near the frontier border," Victor said. "There are reports of potentially habitable worlds and possibly even remnants of ancient alien civilizations. It is a 6-month contract with options to extend if we find something interesting." Marcus felt excitement flutter in his chest. Exploring new worlds. That sounds almost too good to be true. "It will not all be exciting," Victor warned. "There will be long, boring stretches where nothing happens. Equipment will break down at inconvenient times. We will probably have a few close calls with natural hazards like asteroid fields or radiation storms. But it is honest, meaningful work. We are expanding humanity's knowledge 1 star system at a time." "When do we launch?" Marcus asked. 72 hours. "Can you be ready?" Marcus looked around the engineering bay, then back at Victor. "I am ready. I have been ready for a long time. I just did not realize it until now." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the ship early to begin familiarizing himself with the systems. He spent hours in the engineering bay studying the schematics and testing various controls. The Atlas 7 was more advanced than anything he had worked with during his military service. The quantum drives used new technology that was more efficient and stable. The navigation computers could calculate jump coordinates faster and more accurately. Even the basic life support systems were improvements over older designs. Around midday, the other crew members began arriving. The first person Marcus met was Karen Lee. She was a woman in her early 40s with short black hair and confident eyes. She had grown up on a mining colony in the outer systems and had been navigating deep space routes since she was 20. Karen had a no-nonsense attitude but also a quick sense of humor. "So you are the famous janitor," Karen said, shaking Marcus's hand firmly. "Victor told us about how you surprised everyone. I like that. People who surprise you are usually more interesting than people who do exactly what you expect." "I am not sure how interesting I am," Marcus replied. "I am just an old soldier trying something new." "Old soldiers have the best stories," Karen said. "You should tell me about Zeta Crossing sometime. I have heard the official version, but I bet the real story is different." "Maybe after we have been in space for a few weeks," Marcus said. "Right now I would rather focus on learning this ship." Next, he met Paul Martinez, who was the medical officer and cook. Paul was a stocky man in his 30s with a friendly smile and gentle manner. He had trained as a doctor but preferred working on small exploration crews rather than in hospitals. He also genuinely enjoyed cooking and considered it a form of art. "I heard you speak Mandarin," Paul said. "That is impressive. I can barely manage English and Spanish, and my Spanish is not even that good anymore." "Languages are like any skill," Marcus said. "You use them or you lose them. I try to practice regularly." "Well, if you ever want to practice Spanish, I can help with that," Paul offered. "Fair warning though, my cooking is better than my conversation skills." The last crew member to arrive was Susan Brooks. She was a tall woman in her late 20s with red hair and sharp green eyes. She had worked in diplomatic services before joining Frontier Explorers. Her job was to handle all communications with other ships and colonial governments. She was also responsible for managing the ship's external sensors and monitoring for potential threats. "Nice to meet you, Marcus," Susan said. "Victor has been talking about you nonstop. He seems to think you walk on water." "I definitely do not walk on water," Marcus said. "I am just someone with experience who is willing to work hard." "That is exactly what we need," Susan replied. "This crew has good people, but we were missing someone with real military experience. Someone who has been in actual crisis situations and knows how to stay calm when things go wrong." Over the next 2 days, the crew worked together preparing the ship for launch. They loaded supplies and ran system checks and completed safety drills. Marcus was impressed by how well everyone worked as a team. There was mutual respect and clear communication. Nobody tried to assert dominance or play political games. Everyone focused on doing their job well. Victor let Marcus take the lead on the engineering preparations. Marcus went through every system, methodically checking and double-checking everything. He found a few minor issues that needed attention. A coolant line that was slightly loose, a sensor calibration that was off by a small margin. Nothing dangerous, but the kind of details that could become problems during a long mission. "You have a good eye," Victor said, watching Marcus work. "Most people would have missed those issues." "Most people have not had equipment failures kill their friends," Marcus said quietly. "After Zeta crossing, I became obsessive about checking everything. Some people called it paranoia, but paranoia keeps you alive in space." "It is not paranoia if the danger is real," Victor agreed. "That attention to detail is exactly why I wanted you on this crew." On the evening before launch, the crew gathered in the ship's common area for a meal together. Paul had cooked something special involving chicken and vegetables and spices that made the whole ship smell wonderful. They sat around a table that folded down from the wall and ate, while talking about the upcoming mission. "The survey sector we are heading to has 17 star systems," Victor explained, pulling up a holographic map. "Most of them have never been visited by human ships. Our job is to scan each system and catalog any interesting features, planets that might be habitable, asteroid fields that might contain valuable minerals, anything that could be useful for future colonization or resource extraction." "How long will it take to survey 17 systems?" Marcus asked. "If everything goes smoothly, about 5 months," Karen answered. "But things never go smoothly. We will probably spend 6 months out there, maybe longer." "What kind of dangers should we expect?" Susan asked. "The usual," Victor said. "Navigation hazards like asteroid fields and radiation zones. Equipment failures because nothing works perfectly forever. Isolation stress because 6 months is a long time to be stuck on a small ship with the same people. And there is always the small possibility of encountering pirates or raiders, but that is unlikely in unexplored territory." "Pirates go where the money is," Karen added. "Empty star systems do not have much worth stealing." After dinner, Marcus returned to his quarters. The room was small but private, with a bunk and a desk and a locker for his belongings. It was more space than he had in his apartment, and everything was new and clean. He unpacked his duffel bag and put his few possessions away. Then he sat on the bunk and thought about what he was doing. Tomorrow he would leave Earth's orbit and venture back into deep space. It had been 15 years since he last traveled beyond the solar system. 15 years since Zeta crossing and all the pain that came with it. He had spent those years hiding from his past and from himself, working a job that required nothing from him except showing up and following simple routines. Now he was choosing to step back into danger and responsibility. He would be making decisions that could affect the lives of his crew members. If something went wrong, if he made a mistake, people could die. That weight felt heavy on his shoulders, but it also felt right. He had spent too long running away from who he really was. Marcus pulled out a small box from his duffel bag. Inside was a military medal that he had not looked at in years. It was the citation for valor he received after Zeta Crossing. He stared at it for a long moment, then put it back in the box and closed the lid. The past was the past. Tomorrow was about the future. He laid down on his bunk and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly, but when it finally arrived, his dreams were not nightmares. Instead, he dreamed of stars and unexplored worlds and new beginnings. Launch day arrived with clear skies and perfect weather. Marcus woke up early and went through his morning routine. He ate breakfast in the common area where Paul had prepared eggs and toast. The other crew members trickled in one by one, looking both excited and nervous. This was the beginning of a long journey into the unknown, and everyone felt the weight of that. Victor gathered them all in the bridge 2 hours before scheduled launch. The bridge was the heart of the ship, with stations for the pilot and navigator and communications officer. Large windows showed the spaceport outside and the blue sky beyond. Soon they would leave that sky behind and enter the endless black. "I want to say a few things before we launch," Victor began. "We are about to spend 6 months together in a small space. That can be difficult. People get on each other's nerves. Small irritations become big problems. The key to surviving it is communication and respect. If something bothers you, speak up before it becomes a crisis. Treat each other with kindness even when you are tired or frustrated." Everyone nodded. They all knew the importance of crew cohesion on long missions. "Second," Victor continued, "safety is always our top priority. If anyone sees something that does not look right or feel right, say something immediately. I do not care if it turns out to be nothing. I would rather investigate 100 false alarms than miss one real problem." "Agreed," Marcus said. "In space, paranoia is a survival skill." "Exactly," Victor said. "Third and finally, remember why we are doing this. We are expanding humanity's knowledge and reach. The work we do will help future generations. That is something to be proud of." The crew spent the next hour running final system checks. Marcus went through the engineering systems one last time, verifying that everything was functioning correctly. Karen prepared the navigation computers and plotted their initial course. Susan tested the communications array and confirmed they could reach the nearest relay stations. Paul made sure the medical bay was fully stocked and the food storage was secure. At exactly 10 o'clock station time, Victor took his seat in the pilot's chair. Marcus sat at the engineering station monitoring the ship's vital systems. Karen was at navigation and Susan handled communications. Paul strapped into a passenger seat since his skills would not be needed until they were underway. "Horizon Station, this is Atlas 7 requesting clearance for departure," Susan said into her headset. "Atlas 7, you are cleared for departure," a voice replied from the station control. "Safe travels and good luck with your survey mission." Victor's hands moved across the controls and the ship's engines came to life. Marcus felt the familiar vibration through the deck as the quantum drives began their startup sequence. It was a feeling he had not experienced in 15 years, and it made his heart race with anticipation. The Atlas 7 lifted smoothly off the landing pad and rose into the sky. They climbed steadily, gaining altitude and speed. Marcus watched his displays showing power levels and fuel consumption and structural stress. Everything was performing within normal parameters. The ship handled beautifully, responding precisely to Victor's commands. They broke through Earth's atmosphere and suddenly the sky turned black. Stars appeared everywhere, infinitely bright against the darkness. Marcus had forgotten how beautiful it was, how vast and humbling and full of possibilities. He felt tears prick at his eyes, but he blinked them away quickly. "Initiating quantum drive," Victor announced. "Jump in 30 seconds." Karen called out coordinates and Victor entered them into the navigation system. Marcus watched as the quantum drives built up to full power. Energy readings climbed steadily toward the jump threshold. Everything looked good. "Jump in 10 seconds, Victor said. 9, 8, 7. Marcus gripped his chair's armrests. He had made hundreds of quantum jumps during his military service, but there was always a moment of fear before the transition. A moment where you wondered if this would be the time something went wrong. 3, 2, 1, jump. Reality twisted. For a fraction of a second, Marcus felt like he was being pulled apart and compressed simultaneously. Colors shifted into impossible spectrums. Then everything snapped back to normal and they were somewhere else. Earth and its sun were gone. Instead, they were in the empty space between star systems. "Jump successful," Karen reported, checking her instruments. "Position confirmed. We are exactly where we should be." "All systems normal," Marcus added, looking at his displays. No damage or anomalies detected. Excellent, Victor said, relaxing slightly in his chair. Set course for the first survey system. We have a long journey ahead of us. The first 2 weeks in space passed relatively smoothly. The crew settled into a routine. They took shifts monitoring the ship's systems. They ate meals together. They exercised in the small gym area to maintain muscle mass in the low gravity. They slowly got to know each other better. Marcus found that he enjoyed the work. The engineering systems required constant attention, but not in a stressful way. It was satisfying to maintain the ship and solve small problems before they became big ones. He also appreciated the quiet. Space was peaceful in a way that Earth never was. Karen turned out to be an excellent navigator with an intuitive understanding of orbital mechanics. Paul kept everyone well-fed and healthy. Susan managed communications efficiently and kept detailed logs of everything. They were a good crew, and Marcus felt fortunate to be working with them. Victor proved to be an excellent captain. He made decisions quickly but not rashly. He listened to input from his crew but did not let discussions drag on forever. He was fair and consistent. Marcus noticed that the others respected him genuinely, not just because he was the boss, but because he had earned their respect. One evening during the 3rd week, Marcus and Victor were alone on the bridge during the night shift. The ship was cruising smoothly toward their destination, and there was not much to do except monitor the instruments and stay alert. "Can I ask you something personal?" Victor said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Sure," Marcus replied. "Do you regret leaving Earth, giving up the safe, simple life for this?" Marcus thought about the question. "No, I do not regret it. I spent 15 years playing it safe and I was miserable. I did not realize how miserable until you gave me a reason to hope for something better." "What made you so miserable?" Victor asked. "The job itself or something deeper?" "Something deeper," Marcus admitted. "After Zeta Crossing, I felt like I did not deserve to be happy. My friends died and I survived. That did not seem fair, so I punished myself by choosing a life that required nothing from me, a life where I could just exist without really living." "Survivor's guilt," Victor said quietly. "Yes, but I am starting to understand that survival is not something to feel guilty about. The people who died at Zeta Crossing would not want me to waste the life they helped save. They would want me to do something meaningful with it." "I think you are right about that," Victor said. "And this mission is meaningful. We are doing something that matters." "We are," Marcus agreed. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." "Thank you for taking it," Victor replied. "You are exactly the kind of person I want on my crew." They reached the first survey system on schedule 4 weeks after leaving Earth. It was an unremarkable system with a yellow star and 6 planets. Karen guided them into a stable orbit around the 4th planet, which showed signs of having liquid water. Susan deployed sensor probes while Marcus monitored the ship's power systems. The survey work was methodical and sometimes tedious. They scanned each planet carefully, looking for anything unusual or valuable. They took thousands of readings and measurements. They collected data about atmospheric composition and surface temperatures and magnetic fields. Most of it would be analyzed later by scientists back on Earth, but the crew did preliminary assessments. The 4th planet turned out to be marginally habitable. It had oxygen in the atmosphere and liquid water on the surface, but the temperature swings were extreme. During the day, the equatorial regions became hot enough to boil water. At night, they dropped below freezing. Still, it was more promising than most planets, and Victor noted it in his report as worthy of further study. They moved through the system slowly and carefully, surveying each planet in turn. The work took 3 weeks. Then they jumped to the next system and started the process over again. Days blended together into a comfortable routine. Wake up, eat breakfast, run diagnostic survey, whatever was scheduled. Eat lunch, do maintenance work, eat dinner, sleep, repeat. Marcus found himself genuinely happy for the first time in years. The work gave him purpose. The crew gave him companionship. The vastness of space gave him perspective. His past was still there and the memories of Zeta Crossing still hurt, but they did not define him anymore. He was building something new. 2 months into the mission, they encountered their first real problem. They were surveying the 6th system when the quantum drive developed a fault. Marcus detected it during a routine diagnostic. One of the primary coils was showing unusual energy fluctuations. It was not an immediate crisis, but it needed to be addressed before they made their next jump. "How serious is it?" Victor asked when Marcus reported the issue. Serious enough that we should not jump until I fix it, Marcus said. If that coil fails during a jump, we could end up anywhere or nowhere. How long will repairs take? Probably 2 days, maybe 3. I need to partially disassemble the drive housing to access the coil and then replace it with one of our spares. Do it, Victor said without hesitation. Take whatever time you need. Safety first. Marcus spent the next 3 days working on the quantum drive. It was delicate work that required patience and precision. Paul helped him by holding tools and fetching components. They worked in the cramped engineering spaces wearing protective suits because some areas had to be depressurized during the repair. On the 3rd day, Marcus finally got the new coil installed and began the reassembly process. He tested everything multiple times before declaring the drive operational again. When he was finally satisfied, he reported to Victor that they could safely make their next jump. Excellent work, Victor said. That kind of thorough attention to detail is exactly why you are here. Someone with less experience might have rushed the job and gotten us all killed. The incident reminded everyone that space travel was inherently dangerous. One small malfunction could cascade into disaster. But it also demonstrated that they had the skills and resources to handle problems when they arose. The crew's confidence grew. As the months passed, Marcus noticed changes in himself. He stood straighter and spoke with more confidence. The weight he had carried for 15 years was gradually lifting. He laughed more easily and engaged more openly with the crew. Karen noticed it first and mentioned it during dinner one evening. "You seem different than when we started this mission," she said. "More relaxed or something." "I feel different," Marcus admitted. "I spent a long time trying to be invisible, and now I'm remembering what it is like to be seen." "Well, we see you," Paul said. "And we appreciate having you here." "Agreed," Susan added. "This crew would not be the same without you." Victor raised his glass of water in a toast. To Marcus and to second chances. They all raised their glasses and drank. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. These people had become more than co-workers. They were becoming friends and maybe even family. The mission continued through its 5th and 6th months. They surveyed system after system, finding some interesting discoveries and many mundane ones. They found a planet with unusual crystalline formations that might be valuable. They found an asteroid field rich in rare metals. They found evidence of ancient alien ruins on a small moon, though the ruins were too damaged to tell them much. Each discovery was cataloged and reported back to Earth via the communications relay network. Scientists and colonial planners would review their data and decide which systems deserved follow-up missions. The work they were doing would literally shape humanity's expansion into space for decades to come. Near the end of the 6th month, they completed the survey of the 17th and final system. It was a red dwarf star with 3 small rocky planets, none of which were particularly interesting. But they had completed their contract. "Time to head home. Set course for Earth," Victor ordered. "Let us see what civilization looks like after 6 months away." The journey back took 4 weeks. During that time, the crew began discussing what they would do during their time off. Karen wanted to visit family on Mars. Paul planned to take cooking classes on Earth. Susan was going to spend time at a beach resort somewhere tropical. Victor talked about maintenance work on the ship and preparing for the next mission. "What about you, Marcus?" Victor asked. "What are your plans?" "I do not know yet," Marcus said honestly. "I do not really have family or friends waiting for me. Maybe I will just stay with the ship and help with the maintenance." "Or," Victor suggested, "you could come with me to the company headquarters. We have a shareholders meeting and I could introduce you to some people, maybe help you build a network in the exploration industry." "I would like that," Marcus said. "Thank you." When they finally reached Earth orbit and docked at the station, Marcus felt strange. He had left as a janitor, hiding from his past. He was returning as a chief engineer who had helped complete a successful 6-month exploration mission. He had proven to himself that he still had value and purpose. The crew said their goodbyes at the station, promising to stay in touch. Karen hugged Marcus and told him he was welcome to visit her family anytime. Paul gave him a handwritten cookbook with his favorite recipes. Susan shook his hand firmly and said she hoped they would work together again soon. Victor walked with Marcus through the station toward the transit area. "So what do you think? Was it worth it?" "Absolutely," Marcus said without hesitation. "This was the best decision I've made in 15 years. I am glad to hear that because I want you on the next mission too." We have a contract to explore systems even further out near the galactic rim. It will be 8 months this time. Are you interested? Marcus felt his heart lift with excitement. Yes, I am definitely interested. Good. We launch in 3 months. That gives everyone time to rest and prepare. I will send you the details. They shook hands and then went their separate ways. Marcus took a shuttle down to Earth and checked into a small hotel. He sat on the bed and looked around the plane room. 6 months ago, he had been cleaning rooms like this. Now he was a deep space explorer with plans for the future. He pulled out his tablet and wrote a message to Brandon at Horizon Technologies. He told him about the mission and thanked him for encouraging him to take the chance. He said that sometimes the best thing you can do is jump off the cliff and trust that you will figure out how to fly on the way down. Marcus sent the message and then laid back on the bed. He thought about Zeta Crossing and the friends he had lost. He thought about the 15 years he had spent hiding. He thought about Victor offering him a second chance and the crew who had welcomed him. He thought about unexplored star systems and habitable planets and ancient alien ruins. The universe was vast and full of wonders. Marcus had forgotten that during his years of self-imposed exile. But now he remembered. Now he was living again instead of just existing. He had found his purpose and his place among the stars. Tomorrow he would start preparing for the next mission. But tonight he would simply rest and be grateful for the journey that had brought him here. From invisible janitor to valued crew member. From hiding in shame to exploring with purpose. It had been a long road, but he had finally found his way home.